Welcome and thanks for joining the Ohio River Basin Alliance discussion series. We're glad you've joined us today. We have three speakers that I'll be introducing here in a second. First, I want to thank our chair of the Ohio River Basin Alliance, Craig Butler with the Muskingum Watershed Conservancy District. I want to thank our sponsors for the webinar. That's Orsenco and the Foundation for Ohio River Education. Our ORBA KID committee, that's the Knowledge and Education for Informed Decisions working group. We have Nick Callahan and Adam Scott helping us today from Orsenco, running our webinar. Heather Sprouse from the West Virginia Rivers Coalition, Chris Lorenz from Thomas More University, Heather Mayfield from the Kenton County Conservation District in Kentucky, and Chuck Somerville. My name is Jen Bowman. I'm the Director of Environmental Programs here at the Voinovich School at Ohio University. And we have three speakers here today that will be talking about and sharing with us resources for reducing nutrients as part of the Gulf Hypoxia Task Force. And I will be introducing each speaker, and then we're going to save questions for the end. If you can keep your camera off and muted until the end, put questions into the chat, and we'll go through those at the end. So today we have Julie Harold and Greg Nadgett and Josiah Fry, who will be sharing with us from each of their respective states' nutrient reduction strategy resources. And first up, we'll have Julie Harold. And Julie is with Indiana State Department of Agriculture, the Division of Soil Conservation. She's the program manager for the Conservation Reserve Enhancement Program, CREP, and water quality initiatives. Julie provides leadership and management for the Indiana CREP, the Indiana State Nutrient Reduction Strategy, and the Indiana Science Assessment, as well as the water quality initiatives. She provides Indiana representation on the Gulf Hypoxia Task Force Coordinating Committee, and she's a graduate of Purdue
Hey, baby,
University.
can you turn it off real quick? Turn it off.
With a degree in landscape horticulture and design, and has over 26 years of experience as a conservation professional. So Julie, if you want to go ahead and share your screen, and I'll turn that over to you. Thank you.
Okay, can you see my presentation?
Yep, we can see it.
Okay, good. All right, thank you for having me today. I appreciate you giving me the chance to speak on this Ohio River Basin Alliance webinar. I will be speaking today about some of the efforts and projects under our state nutrient reduction strategy, including how we show successes and how we measure our progress. To start off, I was just going to give a little bit of background about how the state nutrient reduction strategy came about here in Indiana. So some of you may be familiar with the fact that each year there is a hypoxia zone that occurs in the Gulf of Mexico every summer due to nutrient pollution from the Mississippi River Basin, and it's caused by many factors. To help protect our local streams and this issue locally in our states, Indiana, as well as 11 other states within the Mississippi River Basin, have developed state nutrient reduction strategies to reduce these loads that are leaving their states. These strategies are part of a national plan developed by the Gulf of Mexico Hypoxia Task Force to reduce the size of the hypoxia zone. This task force is made up of 5 federal agencies as well as tribes and 12 states that drain to the Mississippi River Basin. There is a map there on the right that shows the 12 states that are part of the Hypoxia Task Force. The Indiana State Department of Agriculture is the agency in Indiana that represents the state of Indiana on the task force. The goal for the Hypoxia Task Force is to reduce the areal extent of the hypoxia zone to less than 5,000 square kilometers by the year 2035, with an agreed upon interim target of a 20% nitrogen and phosphorus load reduction by the year 2025. So there's just a little bit of background about the Hypoxia Task Force and our state strategies. So for the Indiana State Nutrient Reduction Strategy, it was developed to capture statewide, present, and future endeavors in Indiana, which positively impact the state's waters, as well as gauge the progress of conservation, water quality improvement, and soil health practice adoption in Indiana. It represents the state's commitment to reduce nutrient runoff into Indiana waters from both point sources and non-point sources. In the blue box there, it just shows what our guiding principles are within the strategy. And then our strategy also outlines some of the more specific objectives. And I just put a few of them in here just to give you what the big takeaways are from this. And that is the importance of having water quality monitoring information so that we can determine where the work needs to be done to achieve the highest impact. The use of existing programs through the many local, state, and federal water quality programs, and then measuring the impacts of that. So the State Nutrient Reduction Strategy talks about the importance of the partnerships that we have in our state. We have a formal Indiana Conservation Partnership that is made up of 8 different agencies in the state, and you can see their logos there. It's a truly unique approach. I know there's a lot of other states that work with other agencies, but this is a formal partnership where we meet, the leaders of each of these organizations meet each month, and we all work together. The field offices actually house many of these partners all in the same field office. And then we also have a partnership, the Indiana Agriculture Nutrient Alliance, that we work a lot with. And then other partners include Nature Conservancy, USGS, and EPA. So here's just list some of the components that are within our strategy. You can see those listed in that diagram. I'm not going to go through all of these today. I'm just going to touch on a few of them. I already mentioned about how we engage with our partners around the state. And then I'll mention several of the programs that we use to support nutrient reduction in the state. I will talk about the Indiana Science Assessment, and then I'll talk about how we measure and track the impacts of the practices that are put on the ground. So the first thing that I'll touch on today is to talk a little bit about some of our state programs that support nutrient reduction in Indiana. The programs that are listed here are the state programs through the Indiana State Department of Agriculture through our Division of Soil Conservation. We have our Conservation Reserve Enhancement Program. That is a program that has 8 practices eligible within 11 watersheds in the state. Those practices include buffer practices along bodies of water, wetland restorations, and tree planting in the floodplain. The enrollment goal is for 26,250 acres. We are currently just under 22,000 acres that are currently enrolled in the program. We are actively actually working to expand this program statewide later in the year. So it's not available statewide yet, but later towards the end of this year, we are looking to expand the program statewide. We have the Clean Water Indiana program, which is responsible for providing financial assistance to landowners and conservation groups. It provides dollars to the Indiana Soil and Water Conservation Districts for administrative needs, as well as for grants for sediment and nutrient reduction practices through education, technical assistance, training, and cost share programs. And a portion of the Clean Water Indiana dollars each year is given to help support the Conservation Reserve Enhancement Program. And then the third program I have listed here is the Cover Crop Premium Discount Program. This is a program that is a partnership between ISDA, the Nature Conservancy, and the USDA Risk Management Agency. It provides eligible partners in 35 counties in southern Indiana with a $5 per acre premium discount on their following year's crop insurance invoice. The last year, in 2023, I believe, was the 3rd year of enrollment for this program, and it was very popular in a very short amount of time. We had 35,000 acres that were enrolled by 117 participating landowners. And then the last one I've listed here is our Mississippi River Basin Soil Sampling Program. This is a new program that we just started this past year, and the dollars for this come from the Gulf Hypoxia Program, which is a new program through the Hypoxia Task Force. This program focuses on increasing the use of soil testing, working with the farmers to collect soil samples on their farms so that they can know what their nutrients are in their soil and use it as a nutrient management practice to both benefit their farm operation as well as benefit nutrient use efficiency. It does focus on the principles of the 4R nutrient stewardship, and we are targeting more smaller scale farmers that either have never soil tested or have not soil tested within the last 4 years. So the program so far has been very successful. We've had a lot of interest in the program, and we had a sign up in the fall of last year was our first sign up, and in a matter of 4 weeks we had 13,000 acres signed up across 170 farms. And we estimate that our ISDA field staff collected about 1,560 samples. We just began a new sign up just last week for what we're calling our spring sign up. So we'll see how that goes in the next month and what kind of interest we get here in the next month or so for that. Here, I just wanted I just wanted to touch on some of the other state programs through different agencies beside the State Department of Ag. We have a couple of programs that are under the Department of Natural Resources. There is the Lake and River Enhancement Program, where a portion of the boat registration fees that are collected around the state are used to provide dollars to grant projects that reduce non-point source sediment and nutrient pollution to our publicly accessible lakes and rivers in the state. And then there's also the Healthy Rivers Initiative, that is a program that's used to permanently protect areas within the Wabash River and Sugar Creek floodplains, as well as the Muscatatuck River floodplains, and that is in the southern portion of the state. And then there are some programs under the Indiana Department of Environmental Management. Many of you might be familiar already with the Section 319 program. The State Department of Agriculture, the Indiana Department of Environmental Management is the agency in Indiana that manages those $319. And since 1994, they have directed over $80 million of 319 funds in the state to go towards non-point source projects. So just touching on a few of those there. Next, I'm going to go to the list of federal programs. Many of you are familiar with the whole gamut of federal programs that there are available to landowners in our state as well as other states. These are programs that are available through both the Natural Resource Conservation Service and the USDA Farm Service Agency. And on the right-hand side there, I just put a snapshot of some of the dollars that went out to landowners just in 2023 through 4 of these federal programs. So you can see there's a lot of acres that have been impacted and a lot of dollars that have been given to landowners to put in conservation practices. Some of the other partners that we work with, I did mention earlier when I showed the partnership slide about the Indiana Agricultural Nutrient Alliance. That is an organization that's made up of agricultural agencies or organizations such as Indiana Corn Marketing Council, Soybean Alliance, and then all the partners within Indiana Conservation Partnership are under IANA. And then we have conservation organizations like the Nature Conservancy that are a part of that as well. And then Purdue University is also a part of IANA. And one of the big things with IANA is to promote 4R nutrient stewardship and the principles involved in that, which is the right source, right rate, right time, and the right place. Okay, so moving away from that, the next thing I wanted to touch on was the Indiana Science Assessment. So when thinking about a science assessment and why to have one, there are 2 main questions to ask around water quality and nutrients. The first one is, how much nitrogen, phosphorus, and sediment are actually leaving and entering the states in our waters, and in what direction are we trending? And then second is, how effective really are those conservation practices that we recommend and implement in Indiana at reducing nutrients. So our science assessment, we developed what we refer to as our core team of representatives around the state from different agencies and organizations, and you can see those listed in that diagram there. The strategy was developed by this core team in 2019, and I put in there the link to the science assessment website where you can get more information on the efforts and activities going on under the science assessment, as well as a QR code for your to help make that a little easier to get to. There are two components under the science assessment. Our first component is to determine historic and ongoing nutrient loads leaving the state, and also by watershed basins used in the state nutrient reduction strategy. This was a component that was led by ISDA, but had some support from USGS, IDEM, and the Nature Conservancy. There was a report that was completed that shows the trend results for the loads and concentrations at 20 different locations in the state, including the pour points and within the basins. There is a link to that report available, as well as a QR code. And then the second main component of our science assessment is to improve the current method for determining the sediment and nutrient load reductions from conservation practices to include dissolved nutrients and determine the efficiency of conservation practices in reducing nutrient loads. So I'm going to talk just a little bit about each one of these components. So for the process that we use for our component one, I mentioned how we wanted to determine our nutrient loads and water quality trends at pour points at the state border, as well as within the state in the major river basins. And we did this by using the model known as the WRDIS model, the USGS weighted regressions on time, discharge, and season model. We use water quality monitoring data from the IDEM's fixation network sites, as well as USGS discharge and stream gauge network. The parameters that we looked at in this analysis were our total nitrogen, total phosphorus, and total suspended solids. We had 20 sites around the state that were part of this analysis, and you can kind of see those a little bit on this map here on the right. We had 9 sites that we called export sites, and these are sites that are leaving our state. We have 3 import sites, so it's those sites that are coming into our state. And then we have 8 interior sites, so it's those sites within our state that we can tell the water quality within our state. Just wanted to show you here, we took the report and the results of that report and created an online tool where you can, it's more publicly accessible. You can go to this tool. It is on our science assessment website. So if you go to that link or use the QR code I provided earlier, you can get to this. Here's just a couple of snapshots of what this tool looks like. It gives a background of the project, our analysis, how we went about and did the project. Here's another snapshot of the tool itself, showing the trends and giving information about each of the basins that were analyzed as part of this. So all this information is available on our online tool for component 1. Excuse me, I'm going to get a drink. All right. So the next steps for our component 1 is to do a comparison of all of the basins that were and the locations that were analyzed, so that we can get an idea of which watersheds have the highest loads and concentrations. We want to be able to determine, the reductions that are a baseline of reductions that are needed, so that we know where we are based on the trends, this trends analysis that was done, but we want to be able to tell how far we have come and what kind of reductions are needed. And this will help us to illustrate the investment of the scale of conservation that is needed in the state. Analyzing the water quality monitoring information to determine loading and trends within each of the basins in the state will help to show the current state of Indiana's water quality, which will further help in prioritizing watersheds for more targeted conservation efforts in the future. So moving on to component 2, This, as I mentioned before, is where we are working to try to improve the process that we currently use for how we calculate our nutrient load reductions. We currently use the Region 5 model. We've been doing that since about 2015, I believe it is. And that process has worked well for us, but we know that we're missing important components such as the dissolved nutrients. So this component is working to improve that process. We are wanting to quantify the effects of conservation practices, and we are doing that by looking at nitrogen loss, the phosphorus loss, and the sediment loss. So, same processes as not processes, but same three, I guess you could say, components of or parameters, like whatever word you want to use for those, that we currently do with the Region 5 model. So we're staying with nitrogen, phosphorus, and sediment, but we're just trying to come up with a better, more accurate method of how we track these reductions and what the effectiveness is of practices for reducing these. We are including reductions in both surface runoff and tile drainage where applicable, and we are expressing reductions in two ways, both by percent reduction and pounds per acre. Some of the products coming out of the science assessment. So there's a lot of work behind the scenes in working on this. We do have a science committee that is made up of experts and researchers around the state. They work together to get consensus on what the effectiveness of the practices are. So we have a research associate that works at Purdue University that is analyzing a lot of the research data that is out there for conservation practices. And the science committee is made up of researchers and experts from several different universities in the state, not just Purdue University, but we're also working with those from Indiana University. We've got USGS is a part of it. So we've got lots of people that are a part of that science committee. So what I wanted to show here is just some of the products of what is coming out of the work with our science assessment. We have developed a document of the practice definitions, and that is available on our website. We are working towards creating the tool that will calculate our practice effectiveness that I mentioned a little, have already mentioned. And then we're working to create a table that will report the effectiveness of each of the practices. We are currently working through 25 conservation practices. So we hope to be able to include all 25 of those practices as part of this tool and as a part of the table. And then I wanted to talk a little bit about these practice documents that are being developed for each of these practices. We currently have 4 of these fact sheets available, or have these fact sheets available for 4 practices: for cover crops, subsurface phosphorus placement, drainage water management, and then the 4th one that we have finished and have available is for the phosphorus rate. So the goal and the plan is to have a fact sheet developed for each of the practices that we are analyzing through our science assessment. The next and the last slide relating to our science assessment is we have created what we're calling our Indiana Nutrient Research and Education Program. So I wanted to introduce this to you guys. This is the first year for this program, and this really is just to continue and expand upon the work of our science assessment. We started our science assessment with a 2-year EPA grant, and we got to the end of that grant and realized we needed to continue to work on the science assessment. It's work that needs to continue for many more years as more research is done and more research is found that we can analyze. So we created this program. It will be housed at Purdue, but will continue to include the science committee of experts and researchers around the state, and as well as looking at some of the work that our neighboring states are doing as well. So some of the goals are listed there. I will not read through those, but they are here on the slide for your information. And then lastly, I wanted to touch on some of the ways that we measure our impacts. And we do that several different ways. We do have our tillage and cover crop transects. These are transects that are done in every county in the state, and they have been done since 1990. So we have a really long data set of information as far as, you know, the tillage that's been done in the state, the amount of cover crops that have been planted each year. So it's really a good data set, and we will continue to conduct these kind of transects. Our Region 5 model analysis, I touched on this a little bit earlier, where we use the Region 5 model to calculate our nutrient load reductions. For those of you that are not familiar with the Region 5 model, it is a model that only calculates the nitrogen and phosphorus that is attached to sediment. And that is why we're missing the important components like dissolved nutrients. So our science assessment is touching on improving that method. And then another way that we track our impacts is we do have a GIS basin story map that we created. And this is basically, it's just showing all the resources available to landowners. It shows information from our tillage transects. It shows information from the Region 5 model analysis. It shows water quality monitoring data that's collected in each of the watersheds in the state. So this is a story map that is available on our state nutrient reduction strategy website. We do the performance measures monitoring. So this is really in-stream water quality monitoring that is performed for, excuse me, on special projects throughout the state. And this is to help us look for any watershed improvements and any trend analysis of the data that comes from those edge of field monitoring sites or special monitoring locations we have around the state. And then lastly, I just wanted to mention here the regulatory framework that we have with our publicly owned treatment works, and then the long-term control plans that are a part of that regulatory framework. I didn't really touch too much on that earlier, but it is one of the ways that nutrient pollution is tracked in the state. So a lot of information I know I just shared. There's a lot within our state nutrient reduction strategy, but that is the end of my presentation. And we can, if you have questions, we can touch on those later. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Julie. Incredible work, and really your science assessment is commendable. So I'd like to follow up on that with you later. If folks have questions for Julie, please put them in the chat and we'll get to them at the end while we transition over to our next speaker, Greg Nadgett, with the Ohio Department of Agriculture, Division of Soil and Water Conservation. He's the Watershed Program Administrator. Originally, he's from Meadville, Pennsylvania, and a longtime resident of Columbus, Ohio area. Earned a BA from Oklahoma University and an MPA from Indiana University. In addition to supporting the ODA Watershed Management Program, Greg coordinates with various partners to support delivery of non-point source and watershed management initiatives. In addition to the Gulf of Mexico Hypoxia Task Force, he serves on several state and regional coordination, grant evaluation, and advisory groups, including the Great Lakes Nutrient Annex Subcommittee, the Great Lakes Sediment and Nutrient Reduction Task Force, the Harmful Algal Bloom Research Initiative Advisory Committee, and the Ohio Water Resources Committee, among others. He's also the current secretary and past president of the Ohio Management Association of Ohio. Thank you, Greg. I'm going to turn that over to you. I can see your presentation. Looks great.
Great. Thank you, Jen. And I'm going to have to trim down that bio. Anyway, thank you for that. And thank you, Orba, for inviting me to this. I'm really excited to be talking here with my colleagues from the Gulf Hypoxia Task Force. And let's just get going here. Give you a little bit of, let's see, am I advancing?
No,
No.
so just the cover.
Of course, this worked perfectly until I tried to start here.
Do you want to go back to your work view and advance through them that way?
My keyboard isn't responding. Nothing's responding. You know what? Could we skip to Josiah and come
Sure.
back to me? I really apologize. I need to straighten out this technical difficulty.
Okay. So let me introduce Josiah Fry. He serves at the Kentucky Division of Water's Nutrient Reduction and Success Coordinator, where he leads the state nutrient reduction strategy and coordinates collaborative progress tracking. Prior to joining the agency, he worked for nearly a decade as an environmental consultant on projects from wetland delineation and solar farm siting to brownfields redevelopment. He earned a degree in natural resources conservation and management from the University of Kentucky. So I see your slides here, Josiah. Looks good. If you want to just pop your camera on, and I'm going to turn mine off.
All right, everybody can hear me?
Yep, I can hear you.
And I'm live. All right, good deal. And everybody can see my intro, and we will make sure
Yep,
that we're
looks good.
advancing. Good, all right. So my name is Josiah Fry. I'm with the Kentucky Division of Water. I'm our Nutrient Reduction and Success Coordinator. So mostly I work on this nutrient reduction strategy for the state here in Frankfurt. And I'm just going to give you a little bit of an update of what we've been up to. We updated our nutrient reduction strategy in 2022, in December of 2022. And so most of the information I'm going to provide is kind of from that point and on forward. So we've been working, like I said, once we issued our nutrient reduction strategy in 2022, we shortly thereafter were awarded funding through the Gulf Hypoxia program through EPA to do a number of different things and take the strategies that we identified in our nutrient reduction strategy, all the different things that we wanted to do, and then start working on some of those. One of the things that we identified early in that report was a need to expand some of our monitoring. And so you'll see in this map on the right here, this shows kind of the broad scope of our monitoring efforts across the state. We have an ambient monitoring network through the Division of Water, through our personnel, and you can see those monitored watersheds in blue. We've got bi-monthly data going back in most of those watersheds to at least the 90s. There's a few watersheds that go back to 1979. And we've kind of consolidated that data along with some of our partner information, which you can see the watersheds that Orsenco sampling sites cover are in red. And of course, the other USGS sites, those are in green. Those are their super gauges that monitor a in situ nitrate in addition to other parameters. And all these gauges are typically co-located with a USGS site. And there were a couple areas in Western Kentucky where we knew we had some long-term trend monitoring gaps. So that's not to mean that we don't have sampling going on there for other programs. It's just the long-term consistent bi-monthly sampling associated with flow gauges just wasn't happening there. So we were able to use that funding to put gauges on Mayfield Creek and O'Brien Creek out in Western Kentucky. And then we've also got our field crews that are going to be sampling those. And I've already started that, sampling those for nutrients on a bi-monthly basis so that they're integrated with the rest of our network. So we think that puts us in a good place to determine, long-term trends going forward and have a little bit more holistic understanding of the state, particularly that data gap out there. So we're really excited about that because that pretty much immediately fills one of our needs that was identified in the nutrient reduction strategy. The strategy also kind of outlined two additional things that we wanted to work on. One is to coordinate with our stormwater programs and our wastewater programs or clean water programs. And so what we were able to do is provide a contract through Kentucky Water Resources Research Institute, which I believe now is just KWRI, or Kentucky Water Research Institute. That was identified some time ago with Kentucky Stormwater Association to fund a stormwater program, a toolkit, so to speak, that would help kind of level the playing field with those permittees, especially those stormwater municipalities that are smaller and don't have quite the same resources as some of the large ones. So it's a little bit of a information sharing platform where we've got different modules that are provided by the university, but it helps facilitate some of that information transfer, but also some learning from some of the larger municipalities and them sharing what they've learned with some of those other smaller municipalities. So that includes these modules, these online modules, and there's also going to be some in-person workshops, and that's already started. So that was a need we identified some time ago. We're able to fund that, and we're pretty excited about that as well, as it's already off and running. The other thing that we identified was a need to do to address our nutrient treatment in our municipal wastewater systems. So there's a pilot program to do optimization. Some other states have done this as well, where you cycle your blowers and you do some different things that save energy, but they also improve nutrient treatment. And we're going to be expanding that to our other major POTW permittees. We have a new web page that's also linked on our nutrient reduction web page for that optimization, and I'll provide that kind of landing page here at the end. So those are some of the things that we've already, kind of gotten off the ground with this funding. After we did this strategy update, we've been also working to make sure we're coordinating with our partners and stakeholders and make sure that we have as many people who want to be at the table engaged. So we did a number of presentations, and then in June of 2023, we did a kickoff for the strategy and invited a whole host of folks across different industries and different representation. And then based on the interest in that kickoff meeting in June, we started work groups. And you can see there in the bottom right, we've got about 4 work groups that all met September of last year. And they're also going to be meeting in March of this year. So last September, we did everything here in the Division of Water, kind of kicked those things off. And each work group has kind of a goal. For agriculture, the agri work group is kind of trying to coordinate that public and private conservation effort. For our public agencies, it's trying to kind of make sure that we're all sharing information and data and collaborating as well. With the NGOs, we've recognized a need to better reach different communities across the state, different localities. And so we're hoping that work group helps us achieve that goal, or at least kind of identify where our blind spots are. And the utilities work group is helping kind of inform the progress of that POTW optimization and the MS4 piece as well. We've got those meetings in March. We're going to be doing those offsite. So I think we're meeting at Hancock Biological Station, MSD's facility, one of their facilities in Louisville, USGS's offices, and I think we're going to also meet the Woodford County Conservation District. So if anybody's interested, please let me know. I've got my information there at the end. And then we've also kicked off a nutrient newsletter to try and make sure that even if, for example, you don't have the availability to engage in these work groups, that you're not left out, right? So we want to make sure that everybody has the ability to be abreast of what's going on with our nutrient progress, and then also hopefully engage more people and get them engaged in these work groups as well. But so that's been going on a quarterly basis. We did our first one in November of 2023. Our second one went out in January, and that's hyperlinked on our website. So if you know of anybody who might be interested in the work groups or in being on that listserv, please let me know. And the other thing that we've kind of been trying to invest into and build into our partnerships. We have an Ag Water Quality Act in Kentucky that requires all farms over 10 acres to have a plan and implement that plan to protect water quality. And we made a concerted effort a few years ago to update that planning tool and to make it electronic and online. We had farmers saying, look, we've got multiple jobs typically, and we need to be able to do this in our PJs, the TurboTax version of this. So we developed that, but we also recognize there's a need to continue to make sure that we get the word out because this has been around since the 90s. So we've been running ads in Cow Country News and Soybean Sentinel with some of our partners, but also in Boyle County, where we're also promoting a cover crop initiative that we're kicking off here. I think we just kicked off last week to help fund cover crops with the Boyle County Conservation District as part of a kind of a larger investment around Lake Harrington. There's some wastewater investments that are going on in there too. I won't get into much detail. I don't want to steal anybody's thunder, but we're trying to consolidate and coordinate where we're investing. So that's part of that. The other thing we're doing is working with the state of Tennessee. We've had a long-standing partnership, and we also share a lot of waterways. And so we're actually in the process right now of working with partners with the Tennessee Department of Agriculture, NRCS, and TDEC to potentially apply for an RCPP grant with NRCS. So we're trying and bring as many groups to the table for these different initiatives and make sure we're leveraging each other's resources in a way that mutually benefits all of us and pushes this nutrient issue forward. I would be remiss if I also didn't mention we've got as part of this we created like door hangers, nutrient door hangers for our municipalities as well that will be included in that. That was kind of tied in with some of our ag water planning, but or some of the funding for that. So we're moving all these things forward, and we're pretty excited about what comes next. If you're interested, you want to know more information about it, check out either one of these links, eec.ky.gov/agwater or nutrient reduction. We've got a lot of information. I think we've even got the door hangers are getting ready to be on our nutrient reduction page, along with the other lawn care resources. And all these things kind of hyperlink to each other, so it's a little bit of a circular digital economy. If you'd like any more information about this or even some of our collaborations, I can get you in contact with a number of different people like Paula Akers that work with me. Yeah, so we appreciate the time and anything else that you all are interested in, please let me know, and I'll turn it over here.
Thank you, Josiah. Please, if you have questions for Josiah or Julie, put them in the chat and we will go through them at the end. And we can check back in here with Greg and see if we can try to reshare your presentation. Okay, I can see it.
All right. Well, I think it's working. Yeah, it's working.
Yes.
All right, so let's just keep on rolling here. Thanks for that introduction a few minutes ago, and I appreciate the flexibility. I'm just really honored to be able to tell this story today. I'm not diving really deep into our strategy, but here's a little timeline that puts that in context. Being a water-rich state and 70% agriculture, non-point sources have been an issue for Ohio for a long time. Nutrients among the top of those. We had an experience where we had to reduce nutrients, particulate phosphorus to Lake Erie through the 80s and 90s. And we're feeling pretty good about that. We had a pretty clear lake in the 90s. But we started seeing beach closures. Grand Lake St. Mary's was a real eye-opener in 2010. We developed our nutrient reduction strategy in 2013. And then we had the Lake Erie HAB, not the first one, but it did affect drinking water in Toledo, which was really another wake-up call. And then we added, based on our priority on Lake Erie, we flipped to the, we developed an addendum to the nutrient reduction strategy. And then when Governor DeWine came on board in 2019, he brought along his flagship program, H2 Ohio. Most of what I'm going to be talking about is H2 Ohio. And then that brings us to today, where we're developing a nutrient reduction update. So I mentioned H2 Ohio. Again, this is Governor DeWine's flagship program. These little waves you see up here in the logo, that's really tsunami. Okay, this is a program of magnitude that we've really never experienced before in Ohio. Water resource managers in Ohio collectively threw up a cheer when this program came about, and is really a holy Moses kind of event for us in terms of this program. But anyway, it's huge. We have DNR putting in wetlands, ODA, ag land, BMPs and incentives, and Environmental Protection Agency, helping with home sewage treatment systems and infrastructure and lead removal, things like that. OAC, Lake Erie Commission does a lot of coordination as well. So we went right to work. A consultant was hired. They did a lot of scientific analysis, came up with this set of 10 practices. The agricultural ones here are implemented again by ODA. The soil testing is implemented through voluntary nutrient management plans, which incorporate the tri-state nutrient guidance developed by Purdue. And we have an ancillary program to our main line of H2 Ohio programs with our conservation ditches. ODNR, again, they do the wetlands. So keep on going. Well, this is what it looks like. This is what our map looks like, where we've implemented the voluntary nutrient management plans and following up with implementation practices, variable rate, nutrient placement, and those others I just showed you. But we're looking at about 30% of the acreage in Ohio. That's 2,400 producers, well over 1 million acres, and 18,000 acres of conservation ditches, draining 18,000 acres of farmland. And again, I mentioned the 1.2 million acres of practices following up those voluntary nutrient management plans. So this is our program area for Lake Erie, the Maumee Basin. Then we had an expansion area. We also worked with NRCS to start a RCPP program for this area for manure structures. That's going very well. We've just finished up our third sign up for that. So just another ancillary program we're adding on to H2 Ohio. I'm talking about Lake Erie because this is where our emphasis has been, but we are moving south, so just stand by. DNR, with their wetland program, this is the map of all their sites, and they've already started moving south. You can see a significant amount of work there. And here's their numbers: 170 wetland projects, $143 million. I'm not going to repeat all these. It's pretty impressive. It's just phenomenal, the work that's been going on. They've calculated the reduction value of those nutrients, and you can see those here, big numbers. And Ohio EPA, I'll just share this real quickly, emphasizing the home sewage treatment system upgrades, over $4 million spent on that throughout the state. Supporting us is partnerships have been mentioned by the previous two speakers, and we're no different. We have a Ohio Agricultural Conservation Initiative that came along with H2 Ohio to help support H2 Ohio. And it spans our commodity groups, TNC, Ohio Environmental Council. So it's a really good mix of both industry, universities, and environmental organizations. Another outgrowth of H2 Ohio is the LEARN program, a consortium of universities in this research network that is supporting research to look at the benefits and the nutrient reduction value of the wetland program, of ODNR's wetland program. In the same vein, the Ohio Department of Higher Education provides about $4 million a year for research around harmful algal blooms. This is administered by Ohio Sea Grant. You know, we're learning just so much from all this research. It's just phenomenal what's going on here. Just to look at a little bit of data from the DAP, just to show some progress and how that's being evaluated. You can see the trend line here in terms of soluble reactive phosphorus, and the red line is our goal. It really varies with flow. So this is a graph that everybody's looking at. This is the flow weighted mean. Are we seeing a trend here? Are we affecting the what's going on? The jury's still out. It's too early to tell, really. But we hope that the trend is changing and that we can emulate this in the Ohio River Basin. So we're moving into the Ohio River Basin. We have a goal of 500,000 acres in this remaining component of the state. 500,000 acres of voluntary nutrient management plans. This is really going to be an opportunity for us to increase capacity. And I'll mention that again in a little bit. We're developing software and contracting capacity. It's really just been amazing. This kind of shows you just the land use of the state, and it shows you how we move out from Lake Erie, the western basin of Lake Erie, where these 500,000 acres are likely to occur. We're looking at the Great Miami River Basin in Region 3 and the Scioto Region 4. And the brown agricultural lands are really where we're most likely to see that activity. So we're also working alongside that with the Ohio Regional Watershed Program. We have a new team of regional watershed managers within ODA, and we're looking to develop programs that you know, fit with H2 Ohio and expand that and leverage that. So we have a team working on another RCPP to focus on these grazing lands. Those are the yellower tint in this map. So more to come on that, but we're working. We have plans done for each of these regions. You can download those here, and of course, nutrients are a big part of what we're doing on those plans. New program to come from DNR. This is part of the last biennium budget. We're adding another component to H2 Ohio, a rivers initiative. This is very comprehensive regarding rivers, but related to nutrients. They're funding a CREP program enhancements and some habitat improvements, and all those things help with nutrient and non-point source reduction. A little more about the CREP programs. This is our ongoing Scioto River. The agreement was renewed and rebooted in 2023. This is our proposed area. There's budget in this biennium, funding in this biennium budget to initiate this area for a CREP program. And here's the details. I'm not going to go in deep here because I know we're short on time. This final couple slides here, just this real quick survey of our Gulf hypoxia work plan 1, the first 2 years. We are developing an update to the nutrient reduction strategy, increasing staffing. It's all about building capacity to move H2 Ohio southward into the Ohio Basin. And finally, just a word on that nutrient reduction update. That was another sub-award to the Ohio University. Jen Bowman and her team is leading this. And we're looking forward to it because it's going to really focus a little more on, it's statewide, but it's bringing that focus to the Ohio River Basin. And, we're part of that. The same party of partners is engaged in this as well. So that really wraps it up for me. That was a really quick survey, but again, happy to be here to tell this story.
Thank you, Greg. So we have just 5 minutes here. If anyone has questions, you can put it in the chat or raise your hand and unmute yourself and feel free to ask a question. And, okay, we have a question here from Chris Lawrence. Curious how often the entire group of states meet together to work on this topic.
I guess I'll take that one. Any of us could answer it, I guess. But the coordinating committee meets monthly, right? And there's committees of the coordinating committee, but the whole hypoxia task force typically meets annually at a live meeting. Those are always fun. So do you guys want to add anything to that?
Yeah, I mean, typically the only thing I would add is that the annual meetings just kind of rotate, whether it's in DC or it's within the basin. So we just had one in Arkansas and we're going to have one in Kentucky this year. So, and then they've been hosted all over the place in the past. So
At those annual meetings, do each of the states get a feel for what contribution their state is contributing to the nutrient problem, and inversely a track of the reductions that are happening from those states that is being monitored at that national level, at the US EPA level? Like, is there a chart that says, hey, Ohio or Indiana, this is your contribution of what the problem is here downstream?
There are efforts made in that direction, and I'm not going to go let the others two fill in, but it's really tough to partition that out. But there are efforts, and I don't know. Do you want to take a stab at that, Josiah or Julie?
Yeah, there is Greg, you mentioned that there's several work groups that work within the coordinating committee. There is a work group known as the Trends Work Group that they are looking at the different amounts of water quality nutrients that are coming, what the water quality is coming from each of the states, and developing a trend analysis for each of those states. So each meeting, we do talk about what the whole basin-wide contribution is. We don't typically talk about the states, but we are working towards that through this Trends Work Group.
The real challenge that's been in discussion very recently is just having enough sample sites across all the states that have all the same attributes. So that's a bit of a challenge.
And a lot of the states are doing their own work in determining that as well. I talked about that, Josiah talked about that. So in Indiana, we use IDEM's water quality monitoring sites, their monitoring network that they have, and then each of the states are using USGS. So we kind of all have our own efforts going on as well.
Okay, thank you. I'll follow up with probably each of you as we are working on updating the Ohio nutrient reduction strategy, and very much appreciated the contributions for your presentations today. And I made several notes to follow up with folks on, so appreciate that. So Adam, if you could advance the next slide, we have our last Ohio River Discussion Series webinar of our winter series will be on March 27th. This is our dedicated forum for our student voices across the basin. We have students that will be presenting on research that they're working on in the Ohio River Basin from Ball State, Thomas More University, and Pittsburgh. So you can register as always on Orsenco's website or the QR code here. and that will be on March 27th. Thank you. Yeah, if anyone has future ideas for future webinar series, you can email me. And we run these webinar series January, February, and March each year. Thanks everyone for attending today.